Hey everyone, welcome to tonight's live stream. Tonight we are working on depth and dimension with the color red, and I'll be drawing and coloring a poinsettia for you with Copic markers and Prismacolor colored pencils. So I have some colors set aside here already, just because tonight's image is a little bit complicated. Yeah, it's a little bit late for me here at 7 p.m. and I'm an early person to bed at night. So getting a little bit loopy here. If somebody in the comment section could give me a thumbs up to let me know that the audio is okay and that I don't have to adjust my microphone, that would be wonderful. I really live in fear of talking to dead air for a long time. So, okay, I'm going to plow ahead. I know that there are some advertisements, but I'm just going to keep on going. Last time I was a little bit thrown off by them, but I'm not going to have that happen to me tonight. So, all right, what are we working with? The supplies that I am working with tonight, same as we did last month. Joan is telling me that the sound is good. Thank you, Alyssa. All right, so the supplies that we're working with are the same exact supplies that I was working with before. Dan is here. Hi, Dan. Dan is an older one of my students from a while ago, so it's good to see him here. All right, so all of these Second Tuesday episodes are going to be done in my Zeta series sketchbook, and this is from Stillman and Byrne. It's actually made by Claire Fontaine. That's the parent company, and I'm thinking I kind of like this for journaling. I'm not a big sketchbook person, so this is a little bit out of my comfort zone. I had to do a lot of sketchbooks in art school, and I think it just kind of like killed it for me. They feel like assignments now rather than fun things to work in. So I usually find myself drawing on loose pieces of paper. That way I can move things around, and plus I'm left-handed, so it just kind of it's easier for me as a lefty, I think, just to work on loose sheets of paper, and then I tuck them into a binder later. But because I know a lot of people are, they want to keep things in a bound journal. I've been testing some journals, and I think the Zeta is the one that I'm really settling on. It says mixed media. I don't think it's good for mixed media. I think if they put mixed media on the cover, then they sell more of that paper. I would never watercolor in this, and it does say watercolor. The paper is super smooth. There's that project from last month, the demonstration part. The paper is super smooth, so it works really well with Copic. Kitty? No. Sharpening her nails, or his nails, on the furniture. So the paper is super smooth. It works really well with Copic. It works well with soft colored pencils. But those of you that use polychromos, I think you're going to have a little trouble getting it to stick to the paper because there's not a lot of tooth. There's more tooth, though, on this paper than there is for Express It. And last month I was able to get all of this, the magical swirl there is 100% colored pencil. So that worked just fine. I don't think you could get like 10 or 11 layers on it though, like some of our more extensive colored pencil projects. And then this is that, it came with my Ahuhu markers when I bought the set to test them. And that's a series that you can find over on markernovice.com. This is the one thing about Ahuhu that I really liked, is this little vinyl thing, and it comes in all of the sets. I cut it down and then rounded the edges with one of those corner chompers so that it fits in my Zeta, because it's a little bit big for the Zeta book. It's going to kill me to try and keep this label for you. I put it on a special for tonight, and then I'll have to put it back in a special drawer here. Normally these things go into the trash right away. So, but I want to keep it so that I can keep identifying the notebook for you. They do say Stillman and Byrne on the back, Zeta series. What am I drawing with? I'm drawing with just regular old HB pencil lead. And I've got it in an uni. I think this is a Kuratoga. It's 0.5, and this is one of those fancy mechanical pencils that spins the lead so that you never get a dull point to it. Like with each time it auto feeds, it turns it just a few degrees, but then that keeps you from having one of those flat sides to it. But honestly, that part's nice, but what I really have it for is the squishiness here, because I've got quite the artist bumps on my fingers, and as I start to get older, I'm appreciating squishy grips like this. So I bought it for the grip. The auto feed is nice, but I bought it for the grip. I don't think you need anything special for sketching. You could use these. I love these Ticonderoga pencils, number 2. Love them. They're great. I know that there are drawing sets, and I have them where you have like 10 pencils that all give you a different, there's a 1 and a 2 and an HB and a super B, and yeah. Those are for people who are doing an entire sketch in graphite. Just for drawing an image, any pencil will do. Okay, I said any pencil. Maybe don't do the softer leads because your Copic marker will pick that up and carry it around, but plain old number 2 is fine, folks. Nothing extensive. Now, my mechanical pencil does have, it has an eraser in there, but it's a teeny tiny eraser and it's hard to get to. So I just have like this is a Tombow Mono Knock. It's just a white eraser. And I use that. But normally I draw over the top of my drawings in like this. I'll have to show it to you in a dedicated live stream, I think, because I have to set it up. But normally I draw on fairly transparent paper, and I will draw the first one, and then I'll lay the next piece of transparent over the top of it, and then I draw over the top of that. And it's how I was trained to work, and so I don't do a lot of erasing normally, as you'll see me doing here tonight. And then I try to keep a Hake brush nearby. This is for dusting off your project, all those little rubbery bits that come off of your eraser. I'm not so good about doing it, but the point is when you do this, you run the risk of taking that lead that has fallen off and you didn't know about it, and you're dragging your hand across the project as you're smushing away the eraser bits, and you can accidentally leave quite a good line along the side there. This I find is more important when I'm working with the colored pencil, because the colored pencils, especially Prismacolor, they shed a lot, and as soon as you do that sweeping motion, you'll leave little streaks. So the Hake brush is always out when I'm working with colored pencil. I need to get better about using it with the graphite during these demonstrations. So remember, because I'm left-handed, I take that binder there and I turn it 90 degrees so that I don't have my hand brushing up against, because that hurts after a while to have my left hand sitting on the wires. Books were really designed for right-handed people, and you would have the same problem working right-handed as I have with the left-handedness. Most of the time I don't find being left-handed as a problem, but it is for books. So that's why I have turned the project. I'm going to skip a page here just in case there's anything dirty or messy on there. And then this will be the page that I work on tonight. All right, so photo reference. I have linked up at the top of the chat bar. I've linked the page, the resource page that I have set up at Vanilla Arts, and that has a link to the photo reference, but I'm going to change that photo reference. It was the only one that I could find for free, so that's what I'm working with, but I'm going to be changing it as I draw. So let me figure out, where is it? Here it is. This is the one that was free over at Pixabay, and there's a link to that, and you can download it yourself. It's a free photo reference. And I don't like the color in it. Somebody has monkeyed with the curves on this, so those darks are really, really dark. And then the red is kind of icky. But the other thing is that this has been edited, because I have looked at a lot of poinsettias because I've drawn a lot of them, and the leaves are not going to be like that. That they've put some of those leaves in there. Yeah, because they've isolated on a white background. It just doesn't feel natural to me. I'm going to eliminate some of those leaves. I think I'm just going to have 3 leaves maybe for balance. We'll see what happens as I work. But that one's going to be up in the corner. But if you see me constantly looking down, so right now I am looking at a larger version of what's up there in the corner of my screen because I'm starting to get blind. So I need a larger photo reference than what I can see on my video monitor. And then the second reference that I'm going to be using is not a free reference, but I'm using this one because I like the color in it better. Notice the difference in color. The large one there, I really like the scarlet color that's going on there versus that kind of burnt, whatever that is, up there in the corner. But I'm going to work with the photo that you can download because it's important for you to be able to look at the petals that I've drawn and relate them back as you're coloring this. Yeah, definitely, Nikki. Looks like somebody played with the saturation. I don't know why more and more photographers are doing this. And I can't explain why they're doing it, but it's getting really hard to find good photo references now. I have to use photo references because I teach online and you have to have something to see, and I am a terrible photographer, so I rely on stock photos and purchasing those rights, and it's getting so hard to find. I think I'm just going to have to take another evening class at the community ed to learn how to use my camera better again, because it's getting hard to find things that people haven't monkeyed with. And I really hate it when I find something that works shape-wise, but the color doesn't work because they've turned the saturation way up. In this case, they've pulled up the darks. So it's not just the saturation. They've enhanced the darkness. And if we were to color something that dark, it would look really, really extreme. So our topic tonight is dimension, and I do want to get to drawing that poinsettia, but first, let's talk a little bit about depth and dimension. And I have a few little learning aids here that I just quickly printed these up. But these are some little leaves, and it's pretty typical of a Copic coloring class where they teach you a blending combination. And so this is probably how a lot of people would color a leaf. And so you'd color the first leaf, and then you'd color the second leaf the same way, and then you color the next one, and the next one, and the next one, and the next one. And that's pretty much how tutorials go. Here's your green blending combination. Here's your stamp image. Now we're going to use that blending combination on all of the leaves, and you basically color them all the same. Well, this is a lesson that they're telling you, oh my goodness, look at how dimensional your project looks when you're done with it. But this isn't dimension. This is depth. Depth is distance. And I know in coloring we use depth and dimension it's almost like a compliment. Oh, look at the depth that you got. Oh, so much dimension. This is dimensional coloring. So it's like a buzzword. And we really have lost touch with what it actually means. So what depth means is measuring distance. And what we're measuring from is the nose on your face. So in a poinsettia, how far away is the top petal from the nose on your face? Maybe it's, 8 inches. And maybe the next petal below it is 10 inches. And then the next petal below that is 10.5 inches. It's how far away from your face something is. That is depth. And you kind of see it here, and you'll get it in some tutorials where they have you put just a little bit of extra darkness there. And I say they, but I also mean me, because when I'm teaching beginners, I teach the same exact method. It's good for beginners. You can master it, you understand it. You're also focused on blending, that you don't really want the depth and dimension lessons. But see how there's just a little bit of darkness there, and see the dark part of this leaf matches up with the light part of this leaf. So you're getting the sense that something is distant, but this isn't dimension. Another way to think about it is, well, here's some playing cards, and I have no idea where these came from. I've never been to a casino in my life, but apparently these are casino. I just found them in the junk drawer. And I was like, hey, I need those. So depth is basically coloring a deck of cards. Every one of these cards is a rectangle. Every one of these rectangles is flat, just like our leaf. This is all depth. And you can kind of see in here that there might be a little bit of darkness there, especially if you pull out a flashlight. There's going to be some distance here. How far away is that 3 versus how far away is the 7 of diamonds versus how far away is the king? This is depth. There's some distance going on here. Depth. Dimension is different. You can't color dimension and have everything flat like a playing card or flat like a leaf, because leaves aren't really flat like that in real life. So let me put these cards away. I have got just a white. I cut this out like seconds before the live stream started. All right, so this is just another piece of paper, just plain white. A leaf or a poinsettia petal has dimension. Most leaves have a vein that runs down the center, right? And that center is usually a pleat. So now, see how our leaf is not flat anymore? Our leaf kind of has that right angle to it. This is dimension. So if I were to have a whole bunch of these leaves, whether they're on a plant or whether they're sitting on a table like we're doing here, this is dimension. It's the shape or the form of the leaf, the landscape surface, the overall three-dimensional shape. That's form. So I teach my students that each side of a leaf has a light side and a dark side. And that's kind of the introduction to dimension, kind of that beginner level. And I honestly don't care with my students whether you choose the left side of the leaf or the right side of the leaf. One of them is going to be darker, and as soon as that leaf turns, the other side is the darker one. It's whichever one is further away. We're just kind of pushing things and pulling things closer. But this is rudimentary dimension. This is not depth. This would be depth, because now we've got some that are sitting on top of others. That would be depth. But dimension is the form of the object. And this is beginner dimension, because there's more going on with a petal or a poinsettia leaf than just that. So with our poinsettia leaf, it might grow up out of the stem like so. So it's, if the stem is like right here, see, there's a dimension in a different way. We've got dimension this way, but we've also got dimension this way. So maybe there's a bend, and maybe the tip flips upward, which happens a lot with poinsettias. So now we've got dimension going this way, where it connects to the stem, where it points up, but also there's still that main vein. And you may, I'm going to have to like wrinkle my leaf here, but we might have something like this going on. This is dimension. There's also veins, little subsets coming off that central vein. And each one of those is recessed a little bit. This is another bit of added dimension. So now, see that dimension there? Kind of see those side veins that I put in there? So we've got that center, we've got the bend and the wave, we've got those veins, and often with poinsettias you'll see that vein is sunken, and then the surface rises and then plunges again when you get to that next vein, and then there's a rise and a plunge, and it's almost like they're pleated a bit. So there's bends and there's waves, and there can also be foldovers and curls. This is all that dimensional world that you're not getting in those beginner approaches to depth. You need the dimension to start to make things real looking. So it's not enough to just color with the distance. When we first start, we're working about that blending combination, and then we start combining objects together and we start to get that depth. But then we need to start working on dimension. And tonight I'm going to kind of go nuts because poinsettias, and you can see in our photo reference up there, we've got some petals that are just going all over the place. So don't mistake depth for dimension, because if you only do depth, it's still going to look cartoonish. And actually, it started to remind me of, I see a lot of paper crafters working in this kind of right now. This is depth with no dimension, and it's never going to look real. Part of it is the color, but the other thing is that it's just missing the dimension. When all you have is depth, it has a cartoonish look to it. So that last little bit that you need to get to realism is not a better blending combination. It's to start coloring that fully dimensional form. And it's going to have random waves and wrinkles and pleats and bends. There's so many options. And flowers, I love to teach flowers because you come across every circumstance of dimension possible. So that is one of the reasons why I specifically chose a poinsettia tonight to work with. Definitely a floral. I thought about doing an autumn leaf, a pile of autumn leaves, but we're getting a little bit, I've had snow out there. It was freezing last night, so I'm kind of out of that mood for fall stuff. So I'm going to start drawing this poinsettia now. And the first thing that I do is I give myself some boundaries. I'm going to have one leaf going up in, or one petal going up in that direction. Probably another one coming down here. I don't want to do this too big because it's going to take me a really long time to color if I do that. And then there's kind of one going this direction. Just kind of mapping it out because I don't want one of those images that falls off the page. I have a leaf going off there. This will be pretty good. Okay, so there's kind of something going on there in the center there. I want to open this up and have some white space in there too. That's the other thing that's missing. That's why that was the first clue that this photo had been altered. Not that one, this one. That this one had been altered. Because look at how dark it is all around those center blossom bits. There's no white in the center, and poinsettias are rather open. So that was the first clue. I was like, something's going on here. All right, so we've got those little, the guys that are in here, those little tiny dot things, those are actually the blossoms. The red petals, I'll be calling them petals tonight, but they're actually bracts, and they're just modified leaves. Because when I learn to draw something, I also learn about the botany. Because you kind of have to understand something in order to draw it properly. I'm going to be really loose and casual with these lines tonight. We'll get some pretty good bends going. All right, so I'm going to bring one out that way. This guy has a little wave going on there. I'll put a nice point on the end of that one. And then this one here is a monster, and it's got a massive wave in it. Come back and come around there. And then there's a pleat. And this one comes. And then there's a kickback. And then a point there. That's a pretty good start. There's some little tiny bracts that are coming out. Kind of like the shape of that one. There's one that kicks up like that a bit. It's going to be thin on one side and fatter on the other. All right, so this is a monster over here. Coming up. And then there's quite a wave there. Okay, so I've got two petals that are kind of kicking off in that direction. And I don't think I want them both to have that upturn to it. So the next one is going to be a little different. I don't think I'm going to point it up is the only difference. Maybe I'll just point it like that. There's a cool little wave in that one. Okay, then there's going to be a green leaf up here. We might give that a bonus curl later. This one kind of comes in way out. I'm going to ignore the little ones in there. We're just not even going to draw them. All right, so I've got that one, that one. All right, so then there's a double red here. Maybe I don't even want to draw the double. Yeah, I don't have a lot of room there. Okay, we're winging it. Okay, and then there's going to be that green leaf, and I'm moving it up slightly. And then I got these two green leaves, so I kind of like that there's some green down here, but I don't like that it's hidden behind this monster. What if I do one like right here? I'm going to take the leaf that's normally right here. I'm going to move it right there. Because I'm an artist, I'm allowed to do that. All right, so now I'm doing a petal check. Whenever I draw something, I always want to make sure that everything leads in the direction that it's going. I got two of those right there. I want to draw a third one right there because I like things in threes. All right. Everything feels like it has a home. I wish it was all scooshed that way, but we're good. Okay, so I'm gonna pull out my sticky tack, and this is poster putty. This is not gray sticky kneadable eraser. This is poster putty because this is what we use on colored pencil. It's a little thicker, it's a little stickier. The kneaded erasers are made for graphite, which is what I have here. But later, I also use it on the colored pencil. And a graphite eraser, the kneadable erasers do not work very well on, or they don't work at all, actually, on colored pencil because of that wax binder. Graphite does not have a binder to it. So I end up I don't buy the kneaded erasers at all. And if I need one, like in this situation, I just use the sticky tack. It eventually turns gray and, it's dirty, but it works just like silly putty. You don't rub it back and forth. And I'm just using it to pick up the excess graphite because Copic markers will pick up the graphite and it'll stain the point of your markers. And then the other thing is that Copic marker has resin in it. And so as soon as you go over that pencil line, it's there for good. The resin kind of bonds it to the paper. So I always hear every once in a while, at least once a year, somebody will shoot me a question about that they've colored something in yellow and now they can't erase their lines. It's because the resin has bonded it to the paper. Which markers will I be using tonight? So over on, we call it Vanilla Arts Chat, and it's just over on Facebook. It's a Facebook group that I can put a link to it on the resource page if you'd like to join, if you're not already a member. I did a poll and I just asked people, what's your favorite Christmas red? And no surprise, I think the last time I looked at it, I think 75–80% of people use R29. And my favorite Christmas red barely got any votes. So I am using my favorite Christmas red because I think the reason why people don't use it very much is they don't know what to do with it. So my favorite red is R46. I love this red. It's such a pretty, cheerful red. So this is my color for the poinsettia tonight. And I'm just going to mark that R46. Now, I think the reason why people don't like using R46 is because the only other marker in the 40 series is this R43. They don't blend together really well because there's a big jump there. I know it says R43 to 46. They don't blend very well together because they're too far apart. But plus, this is pink. And so I think that kind of shoots R46 in the foot because R29, you've got that whole length. You got R27, R24. There's all kinds of reds to work with. But with 46, you don't have much. So I'm going to use tonight R46 into R35. And R35 is another color that I love. It's a very pretty carmine red. And this doesn't get used as much because on one side there's pink and on the other side there's R37, which is kind of bordering into maroon. So these two colors are underappreciated and underused. So I wanted to use them tonight. So R46 and R43 are my poinsettia reds. Now I need a little bit of underpainting, but we also need some leaf colors too. So I pulled out YG67 and YG63 because that's kind of what I saw in a couple of the photo references that I was looking at for color wise. So here's that YG67. I really like the yellow greens. They're easy to work with. And I like this series because they're just a little bit murky. They're not super clean. So this is 63 and 67. Now, I am going to do a little complementary underpainting. So let me pull up my color wheel here. And if we go from the red, so here's R29, the R46 would be a little closer to the RV06 here. But if you shoot across the way, we're looking at kind of a green. So why not use the green that I've already got pulled out for the leaves? All right, so I want to underpaint the YG67. Let me try it with the R35 underneath it to make my darkest green. And to me, that's a little too strong because I can still read the pink that's underneath it. So I've got that R43. Remember, I swatched it right there. Let's try that one. That's what I want. See how it creates kind of that desaturated murkiness right there? All right, so I'm going to use the 43 under the 67. And then now let's find a green to go under the R46. So here is that 63. Should work, but it's a little strong. But I think I may need that. Let's step down one to the YG61. And I think this is going to be my main one. So there's that YG61 underneath R46. So this one here is the 63 and this is the 61, and we're just looking right there at that darkness that it creates. And this was the 35 and this was the 43. Yeah, okay. So that's what I'm working with tonight. I have 6 markers. I can do it. All right. What shall I start with? I'm going to start around the true little petals here. Boy, I couldn't have colored that or drawn that any more symmetrical, could I? I don't usually do symmetrical like that. So that was at 43 down first. It creates a shady base for the 67 to go on top of. And there we go. Nikki says her R27 is crusty. I found that with my R24 just this week. I pulled it out to sample it and it was crusty and I'm like, oh no. And that is like one of my oldest markers. So I'm like, I am not having a funeral for you. So tomorrow I need to like nurse it back to health. Oop, I don't want the 61. I want the 63. I'm setting that aside. Okay, so a little note about the technique that you're going to see me coloring with tonight, because I was watching that Witch's Hat live stream back just to make sure I didn't need to clarify anything. And what I noticed is when I'm coloring on this paper, it's not like Express It. There's a stubbornness to this paper, so you'll see me using more ink. You'll see me going over it with the lightest color a little bit more than I normally would. Every paper is a little bit different, but remember that for those of you that have taken my beginner blending classes, we work on Express It because it's a self-blending paper, and so our technique there can be, you know, like we can really work on the technique because you're not fighting the paper. Whereas tonight I'm going to be fighting the paper a little bit. So JM is asking, doesn't red and green make brown? I know we've used green under the red and it doesn't look brown. That is because I've chosen the correct combination there. And that's why you saw me swatch them out. So technically on the color wheel, anytime you do a triad, so you do like R08 plus B66 plus maybe YG25, that would make brown. It's when you get 3 colors going together. And then the other way that you end up making brown is if you have a YG67 with an R27 underneath it. Those same, when the last number matches, that's going to create kind of a yuck color. And that's immediately what I reacted to on this one. This was the Y35 underneath the YG67. And remember when I said that that was too strong? It's because it's starting to lean a little bit brown on me. Oh, JM is Jody. Hi, Jody. I know Jody, I don't know JM. All right, so yeah, Jody, anytime we do a triad, you're going to get a brown because you're like crossing the streams. But also anytime that you get those last 2 numbers, or the value is really what that is. When the values are too similar, as in the R35 is a little darker than it promises to be, and the YG67 is a little lighter. So anytime those 2 values are too close of a match, then you get that yuckiness. But if you step down a little bit to the 43, then we get something that looks green, because the green can dominate the red that's on top of it. You don't want something that totally wipes the color away. So the like an R40 underneath a YG67, you're not even going to see it down there. You want something that can still compete and add its voice, but you don't want it to dominate the image. It'll just look a little bit dirty. All right, so I think I'm gonna, because I've got my greens out, I think I'm just gonna keep going with I'm gonna do the 3 leaves, and then I'll come back and do those bracts. So, photo references galore here. I've got my color reference down there. I gotta just keep straight which one I'm looking at. So I'm looking at the one that's up there in your viewer as well. All right, so let's underpaint for depth. So this leaf is sitting back behind this petal. So we're going to push this area with some of the underpaint, the pink. This leaf is also sitting back behind this petal. So I'm just finding where they overlap, and I'm pushing that leaf darker with the underpaint. That is for depth. We're just making this leaf seem farther away from our nose than this petal or this petal. Now I need to underpaint for dimension. So we've got that center vein, and in my photo reference, there's a lot of darkness on the left-hand side there. And this one is fairly flat. I think I'm going to emphasize right there. And now we're starting to carve some dimension. So that was the R43 underpaint, and then the YG67 is going over the top of it and just slightly beyond. So I've got that depth. Seeing Jody here tonight reminds me that she's been waiting so patiently for brand new classes. So they're coming. 2024 is the year of the class. I've been working on 2 already. I've got one that I'll be filming later this weekend. And there we go. That is the 67. It goes over the top of the pink and slightly beyond. And then I'll pick up the YG61, and everything is going to get a really generous coat of the 63. And here's where I start to see that this paper doesn't blend as well as the Cryogen that we used to use a lot. I miss Cryogen so much. Or the Express It that we use in beginner classes. So I'm just giving this more ink than I normally would. And there we go. You would never know that there was pink underneath there. Oh, Jody says she's good about the classes, and she had a hiatus for medical reasons. Yep. Yeah, it's been a medical year. Whew. Yep. We've had one here too. All right, I got this leaf down here. All right, so we're going to underpaint first for depth. This leaf is sitting back behind this petal, and then it's sitting back behind that petal. On this one, it looks like the point is nice and dark. And then there's some color coming around here. This is the dimension part. '67 is next. Goes over the top of that pink. And slightly beyond. And you'll notice, or maybe you won't notice, but now that I'm mentioning it, you'll notice that I work fast with the pink, and I work almost as fast with the 67. And then when I get that blending color in my hand, I'm slowing down. And how fast you color is ultimately how much time your marker nib is in contact with the paper and how much ink you're soaking into the paper. So I'm not spending a long time. Did you see how fast that was? Not spending a long time building in a lot of green, because it's just that YG67 is going to be a bear to try and blend out if I put too much into the paper. The 63 is the blending color. It's got all that solvent to it. This is the one that I want to be super generous with. And there we go. There's another little leaf, and the dimension is, see how it's starting to rise here and then it's plunging down at the point. We're going to emphasize that even more when we pull out the pencils. All right, last leaf. Ooh, this one is curving up. All right, first let's do the depth. So it's underneath the petal right there, and then it's underneath this petal right there. Just little short flicks, not building in a ton of pink. All right, turn my paper walker jaw there. Okay, so for the dimension, I'm seeing that this half of the leaf is darker. And then there's a monster wave right there. And then it kind of looks like it's tilted away from us. So the 67 then hides that underpaint. And here's the other thing that you want to be careful of. You want to make sure that the 67 comes out beyond the pink, because if you just stop where the pink is, if you just stop where the pink ends, you're only getting one color of green out of all that work. So you need some areas that are YG67 with pink below it, and then other areas where it's YG67 by itself. And I'm working kind of fast here tonight. I would probably color it slightly slower, but I'm concerned about getting all of this done before midnight and I turn into a pumpkin. So take your time with it and really think it through. The other thing is that the more experience you have, just the faster you can color. So me coloring on my own and me thinking it through is probably faster than a lot of people expect. So there we go. We got 3 leaves. They've got some depth because they're sitting behind the red petals. They've got some dimension because we've got some folds and waves going on. Just checking to make sure there's no questions there. Oh, Dan had a stroke. That's why. Oh, and now you're left-handed. Yes, another lefty. Sorry for the circumstances, but we need more left-handed colors. Oh, I'm so glad to see you back, Dan. My husband had his leg amputated earlier this year, so yeah, it's just been a heck of a year for a lot of us. Me vicariously as the caregiver. Wow. Let me know, Dan, if you need some special help as far as modifying the technique, because I've worked with a couple of students now so far who I don't think either one of them had to switch their hand, but they have had grip issues and then kind of a jiggling issue. And I would love to work with you so that we can get you back to full strength working with the markers properly. I mean, that goes for anybody watching this. If you need special instruction on something, don't hesitate to reach out via email, because that is just that's something that I care really strong about, making sure that you can use coloring as part of the recuperative process. Oh, Tina says she was born left and I had to work hard to get... Oh, were you switched, Tina? Yeah. My grandmother was a kindergarten teacher, and she made sure that even though that I was a lefty, she didn't want to switch me, but she wanted to make sure that I knew how to use scissors with my right hand, because as a teacher, she knew how bad all the left-handed scissors were, coated with glue and stuff. And so as a result, I think she kind of turned me ambidextrous, because really the only thing that I do purely left-handed now is draw and color. I can't use my left hand for scissors. I'm just useless with it now because I know how to do the right. And then I keep noticing shooting a gun, golfing, all of it is right-handed. Baseball, I bat right-handed too. So, yay, okay. Taking a break there between the colors, just kind of, this paper takes a little bit longer to dry, but I'm touching it. It feels cool to the touch now, so it's still not quite dry. I don't know if you know that tip. If you touch your paper and it feels like regular finger temperature, you don't notice a temperature difference, then the ink has fully dried because there's no more evaporation happening. But if it feels colder than your finger, that means there's still some evaporation going on. The alcohol is still leaving that area. And I do notice that the Zeta is a little bit, it's almost like coloring on watercolor paper in that it takes a little bit longer to dry. All right, so my blending combination, refresh my brain here, is going to be 61 underneath 46. So I'm going to put my two dark grays. There's the 61, here's the 46, and I'm putting that pink away so that I don't accidentally use it either. And I'm going to start with a little baby. So that was the 61 down in the center there. We're not worried about depth because this one is sitting on top. And then here comes that 35 over the top with a nice generous coat. And there we go. I think I'll do all three of those babies. All right, this one in the photo reference has the dark side towards the bottom there. And I think I'm just going to leave my caps off because I'm cruising along fast enough. So off the top of my head, the student that had grip issues, she found that she could no longer use the chow because they were too skinny. So, and I notice as I'm getting older that the sketch just feel much better in my hand versus when I'm working with a pencil, or those Tri-Plus pens. Those are really, really thin and narrow. So that would be the first tip when you're looking at dexterity issues, is whether you have the chows or the sketch markers. All right, so I've got those three little babies. Now I'm avoiding this monster one here and this monster one here. Let's do this one here. All right, so for depth, I need to put some underpaint behind that little baby one there. And then looking at the photo reference, it looks like I've got a little bit more color on that side. And then there's definitely a lot of color down there at the point. And you notice I do it wrong sometimes, but I try my darndest. When you've got a point like this, start out here and end your stroke in the point. If you start at the point, because it feels like you want to do that because you know where you want that to end, but when you touch down with the marker, you're going to leave a little blob. And so my point there is never going to be as pointy as the point that I have there now, because that's the end of the stroke. So try and end at the point. Oh, there's also a little bit of color there, and it comes up higher on that side. Ooh, that's going to be interesting. All right, so that was depth and then dimension. Now let's push this back behind that little baby there. Ending at the point. I'm going to come back down here. So here's that 35, going over everything and getting it nice and moist. A little bit of a squeaky marker there, but I weighed it yesterday and refilled anything that was below 13.5 grams. So I know that this is not an empty marker, it's just a whiner. All right, let's just work clockwise around here. All right, so this one has a massive dark side to it there. Trying to see my pencil lines. All right, which way is that? There's a wave there. And there's a twist there. I think I'm just going to do this entire side there. I can cross it off my to-do list. Making sure that that ink gets all the way to the end there. I need to change the nib on this 35. When I opened it up to refill it, I noticed that the nib had like crawled out the end, so it was like really long, and so I popped it back in there and it's working its way out again. Has anyone ever had that happen before? I've never seen that happen, so I was like, I didn't know that the nibs could move. Oh, okay. So, Heidi has a question, and she wrote it in a way that would definitely grab my attention. All right, so Heidi's question: what do you do when you order new markers and they come underweight? I just received an order and some were 12.9 grams. I would definitely ask for a replacement. Is Elena on the live stream tonight? I don't know if I haven't seen her name there. Elena has Violetta ink. And gosh, I wish she was here to tell the story herself. But she was telling me that a lot of them are coming to her from the supplier underweight. So, like, they're actually, I kind of wondered if it's like a money saving thing at the factory, that they're just putting in less ink. But I usually tell people that factory weight is 14.6. And the reason why Elena pointed it out was that I had told somebody that factory weight was 11.6 or 14.6. And she said, they're actually coming more like in closer to 14 now. But 12.9 is way underweight. So yeah, I would register your displeasure about that as soon as possible. That way the manufacturer knows, or not the manufacturer, the distributor or the store can replace it right away while your purchase is still fresh in their mind. Because 12.9 is close enough to dead that weight concerns me. Because usually when it's below, I would say when it's below like 12.2 is where I usually, like when I was refilling markers for students, if it was anything below like 12.2, I would have a discussion with the student that there's a good chance that there's some core damage here. Do you want me to try and waste some ink and save the marker, or shall we just save some money? Because I charge them for the ink. Or do you want to just save some money now and get a fresh marker? It's that come to Jesus kind of moment that you've used too much ink out of it. So yeah, I would definitely say something about it. The company had no idea what I was talking about when I said that artists weigh their markers. Okay, Heidi. Yeah. There's a lot of people that are selling markers that don't use markers. So maybe that's the case. But that's disappointing. All right, I'm trying to figure out what I drew there. But one of my students is actually in Japan, and she was at the Copic store and had asked them about underweighed markers, and the clerks pretended to be stupid as well. She said that they were like, you weigh markers? So, yeah, we weigh markers. All right, there we go. I'm kind of like pulling myself back to make sure that it makes sense. Sometimes what I draw doesn't make sense, and then sometimes what I color over the drawing doesn't make sense. Had a beautiful point there, and then I bobbled it on the way back in. Okay, Heidi says they're fighting. Yeah, I would not buy markers from them anymore. For starters, Heidi. Because that's really below the usability level. 13.5 is where you start to see blending issues. I did it. Kind of like that one. All right. Working my way around. I have to keep reorienting it so that I can see the photo reference and match. Because what I've drawn here is not exactly like what's in the photo reference. Get that depth in there behind that little baby. And the other side is fairly unwrinkled. And there's a pleat right there. I keep hearing the little beep beep sounds when the text updates there. All right, everything's got a base coat, so now just come in. I kind of forgot to talk because I was thinking so hard on that one. All right. Next one. I'm still avoiding that monster right there. All right. This one is that funky little wrinkled one. All right, so the stem is going to come down like that. And then I have to push it below there for depth. Sometimes I do have to like break it down. Like I'm not just narrating it for your benefit. Like I really am breaking it down for my own sanity here. Just figuring out what goes where. There's a wrinkle right there. There's a bit of color that comes in there. And there's some over here. And you see where those swishes come in. This is why I'm so adamant about teaching people to swish, because I swish a lot. All right, so there's that stem coming down. Here's where it gets pushed under its neighbor. So there's that depth. And even though I'm basically just covering over the green here, I'm still thinking it through, because I may change my mind and alter the shape of it. Or I may decide that something needs a little bit more mid-tone, and so I'll add in some things with this darker red. There we go. All right, getting down on the side of my marker, just kind of squishing it into the paper to release extra ink on this. And then completing the white space. It's got a nice roll to the side of it. All right, 2 more left. I'm not going to be able to avoid that one much longer. All right, I'm going to orient myself there. The point is dark. Strudel, don't do it. Don't do it, Strudel. Here comes Strudel. They could very easily get to their basket on my counter over there by just jumping up on the counter over there, but they insist on walking past me. There we go, the R35, filling it in. So for this image, I'm not going to redraw it. Instead, what I have is over at sketchgarden.com, I've got this poinsettia, which is very, very similar. Every time I draw a poinsettia, they always end up looking very similar. So I have that from a class that has been retired, and it's just too good of an image to let it just sit there and wither away. So let's see, it looks like there's a question here. On my TV, it looks like velvet. Great choice of marker combination. Thank you, Sherry. Oh, Donna. Okay, so Donna's saying, I always have trouble creating folds, but I think I get it now watching this. Yeah, it's one of those things that you kind of need to practice a little bit. And it's also one of those things that's hard to teach because it's very hard to talk while I'm working my way through it. All right, so I'm trying to find my original stamp lines on this. All right, so back to basics. The stem comes out here, and then it goes underneath that. It doesn't look right. I erased my line too much there, so I've kind of lost where it was going. All right, so there's the depth. I've got it underneath that, and then this is why I put this one off until later. Wow. There's a big bit of darkness going there. The dark side of the fold, and then there's a pleat, and there's a wrinkle there. Wow. The other thing is I'm kind of tackling this as a whole petal. If you want to break it into just the left and just the right, then that simplifies it because you're only looking at half and then looking at the other half. And a couple of times here, I've almost bitten off more than I could chew. Swishing. Yeah, I'm just going to work on this half, and then I'll go back and work on the other half. And it's really the push and pull thing. If I want something pulled towards me or pushed farther away, pulling it with lightness, pushing it with darkness, and that's really what I'm thinking in my head is, does this need to go lighter or does this need to go darker? And really you're just adjusting the value is all that we're doing. We're adding more value to make something seem farther away, or we're leaving more lightness there to help something look closer. The other thing that I wanted to mention is that a lot of times the fact that you're coloring depth and not dimension isn't your fault, because there are a lot of stamps that are drawn without any dimension. I mean, just think about it. The difference between what I've drawn here tonight with these wavy sides versus some of the other poinsettia stamps that you've seen. There are a lot that are very simplistic, and it's hard to color some of those images with realism because they haven't been drawn with the dimension or areas for the dimension. When I was teaching locally at a shop, I always had to use images that the store owner could sell. I couldn't use my own images. I needed stamps that she could carry in the store. And it was very easy to find beginner classes because I wasn't worried about shapes with dimension. But as I started to teach the intermediates and then an advanced class, boy, it got really difficult to find images. And she was special ordering things for me just to keep the advanced students occupied. All right, so see how I've built in more white space than what is in the photo reference? That's on purpose. Just lightening it up. But I do need to make sure that it all makes sense. So I'm going to bring that down there so that has a connection point. This guy would come around and maybe at least everything feels like it's connected there in the center then. Okay, so minimalist as far as the marker list goes, and then I pulled some pencils, but again, it's another one of those, Amy doesn't use too many pencils. So what I've pulled here, and I don't know if I'll pull something else out, is for my pushes on the leaf, I think I'm going to use Tuscan Red, and this is 937. For my pushes on the red petals, I'm going to switch over to dark purple, 931. But I also have green here, Prussian green, 109. It kind of matches my YG67. I'm probably going to end up using it on the red. For the veins on the leaves, I'm going to use Pale Sage, 1089. It's a warm light green with a lot of white in the formula. And that, whenever I'm doing veins and they're light veins, you always need something that has a lot of white so that otherwise it's going to be a transparent pencil and it's not going to show up for veins. So you'll see how this really stands out, and it's because of the white content. And then the highlights on the red petals is going to be Deco Peach, 1013. And I'll update the resource page with whatever it is I end up using tonight. I've got my Prismacolors off to the side here so I can grab something if it doesn't feel like I've got the right color. I'm going to start with these little guys in the center here. And I'm just pushing in the little gaps between them. I'm not pressing very hard. That way, if I make a mistake, it's easy to lift the mistake up with an eraser. I'm just kind of softly in some of the area that originally had the pink. I'm just kind of softly buffing this in. Once again, this is the dark purple. I think I'm going to use the Pale Sage here. Just adding a few more little dots in that the area where the little blossoms are. I know it sounds crazy, but these are actually the reproductive parts, so that's the flower. These are just modified leaves. And I've been noticing in some of the photo references that it looks like a lot of the growers actually pull the flowers off. Because I was looking at some gardening websites and greenhouse websites. Not gardening, greenhouse websites. Okay, so I'm going to push that stem of the green petal back a bit and come in here. I'm doing very small, very light circular technique, just where I had that original pink, just giving it a little extra push with this dark purple. The dark purple has no white in the mixture, so it is a very transparent pencil, and when you use dark purple lightly over the top of another color, the Copic shines through, and so you don't really see purple, you just see darkness. So in most projects, you'll see me using either this dark purple, we call Magic in my classes. So the Magic Dark Purple or Indigo is another pencil that is, it does really well for these pushes, and it just looks like a darker green there, a darker, muddier version of green. So I've got that push in there, so now it just looks like it's a little bit deeper. And when I look at the veins, they are light on a dark background, and that's not true in the red ones. See how the red ones have a dark vein on the red? So that's one of the things that I always check when I'm doing flowers, is what color are the veins. All right, so I'm picking up that pale sage, nice and sharp, and I'm going to use just a little bit more pressure because it's a white based pencil, and it just requires a little more pressure to get it to stick to the paper. And see how that really pops forward? So I've got that central vein going down the center, and it's always a little bit thick. And now I'm looking at the veins. And I know that people kind of go vein crazy, in that when you look at the vein, you can see the central vein, and then you see some branches off of that, and some branches off of that, and some branches off of that. I squint. What are the major ones that I see? And that the only ones that I draw are the ones that I can see when I squint. Anything else is too small of a detail. And I try and get these down in one stroke if possible. As soon as you go back to try and fix it, then you muck it up. If I had tried that with a translucent pencil, the vein wouldn't have shown up at all. And there are some light colors that don't have a high white content. So the way to figure out whether it has a high white content is to get out a piece of black paper. And this is just my scribble. I use it to start my Posca pens. So if it shows up on black paper, it's got enough white for you. All right, so now I'm going to switch to that red, the Tuscan red. I'm going to sharpen my pencil here. And when I'm looking at those veins, it looks like the darkness is on the side that's pointed towards the point. Tuscan red is another one of those magic translucent pencils. So if I use it with pressure, it will look red. But as long as I'm just using it really lightly, it's just giving me a little bit of pushing, a little bit of darkness. And this is how I'm going to get that rise and fall of the dimension between the veins. If you find that you're pressing so hard that it really does look red, you can pull back on the pencil. It's hard to press hard from farther away. The other thing though is that you can't go by where I'm holding it, because, or really any experienced pencil artist, because the longer you're, like the more adept you are at working with a pencil, I can go very, very light from close up. And every once in a while I catch myself coloring really closely on camera, and I always pull back because I'm like, oops, I'm setting a bad example. Okay, so there's a wave going on here, and I need to decide where is the darker side of that wave. I'm going right over the vein. It'll still show through a little bit, but just because the vein is light doesn't mean that it isn't subjected to light and shadow. So it looks like there's been a lot of conversation going on the side there. I'm going to definitely read through the comments that are there on the side bar. I'll read through those probably tomorrow, and I will answer anything that I didn't cover. Or you can also ask it again in the comment section that appears after the live stream is over. Because I know that when I speak live, I don't always say things as clear as I could. All right, a little bit of pulling. Can I do it with this? Yeah. Not too bad for the first one. All right, so back with that dark purple, kind of boosting that push right there. I would much rather come back and fix something with an extra bit of colored pencil if it didn't get pushed enough during the Copic than to choose a darker Copic. Because when you choose that darker Copic, it can get away from you really easily. I always feel like I can adjust things with colored pencil. I don't want to go back in and open up these ink blends. Once again, pressing harder. Trying to do it with one shot, but I do want to thicken it down there at the base. And you'll get some interesting things like right here where the, what is this? The pale sage has gone over the purple. There's like a little bit of a lavender to it, and I love it when that happens. It's one of the reasons why I love colored pencil so much, is because you get these weird, unexpected colors in the overlaps. You notice that I'm doing the veins really fast, and I try not to be matchy-matchy. Very rarely on flowers do you get one on the left and one exactly on the right. Most of the time they're offset a bit. Okay, I need to point it in the right direction. There we go. Okay, so the darker side, and this is that Tuscan red, going right over the base of those white veins. They're this pale sage veins. It always looks a little bit odd when somebody has a set of veins that are bright running right through an area of shade or shadow. So you definitely want to make sure that the veins are just the subject to the light and shadow as everything else. There's a dip right there. Give that just a little bit of pull. There we go. Back with that dark purple. Oop, forgot about that, where the stem comes out. Pushing here for depth. The other thing that I do when I'm adding this little extra in here is that Copic is really bad about getting these fine little points. So I'm sharpening up the triangle right there. It's a wet medium, and wet mediums, they spread. And when ink spreads out, it kind of destroys those nice little points that you thought you were making. That one's a little too matchy-matchy. I didn't intend to make it matchy-matchy. Back with the red now. So I was talking about this with my advanced group on Saturday in their live stream, but I thought I would touch on it here too. I kind of like the fact that this is in one of these notebooks because it makes it hard for you to give it away. I'm really going to make 2024 a year to focus on value studies, or object studies is more the term that I was using then. An object study is where you're drawing the poinsettia to learn push and pull, or you're drawing and coloring the poinsettia to learn better vein technique. You have like a mission and a goal. The goal isn't to come up with something that is beautiful enough to win major art prizes. I think a lot of times, and especially card makers do this a lot, because everything that you do, you end up giving away. And so you put a lot of pressure on yourself to produce something that looks perfect. And I think in a lot of ways, I'm seeing that it's starting to set people back a bit, because you're getting to the point where you're learning more advanced things that need more time and more patience and more study. But because you're trying to produce, you don't get in there and really think things through, because you're on a deadline, or you're altering the color because it has to match something else that it's going with. So I'd really like to push the idea that we're just doing this for the lessons that we can learn on it, not necessarily to produce something that's amazing and wonderful. And give yourself the space to make mistakes and to experiment. So maybe the first petal is done with R46, but you decide that you don't like it and you want to work on a different combination so that you've got 4 different petals in 4 different colors. That would drive most people crazy. You would never do that if you were giving it away, but you're learning and you're experimenting with what can R29 do, or can I substitute R37 instead, and you're learning about the markers there. Giving yourself the space to learn, I think, is super important, especially when we're working at these higher levels. So what I'm seeing here is I'm using the purple over the red and it's looking too bright and I'm not getting a rise. So right here, I want this to come up from out of there. And the reason why it's not rising is because I'm not getting that dirty color at the base. And so I'm going to put in some of that green there and it immediately drives the stem downward. I'm going to do that right here too. Use that green. Now that I know that I need the green there, I can just keep it in my hand and at the ready. So there we go. There's those 3 little immature ones. Lauren was there on Saturday, so she heard the original talk about the object study. The reason why this came up is because if you think about it, everything that I do is to turn into a class or into a graphic for the website. Everything that I do is production. And so I often feel like I don't have the time to experiment. Like I don't have the luxury of experimenting because I've got to get it out. So a lot of times when I'm trying to teach something to my advanced students, it's also because I need the lesson myself too. Just stop and learn while you're doing it so that you don't have to keep making the same mistakes over and over again. And you'll see me kind of moving this around because I'm looking at it from different directions. I love it when I'm watching somebody, like on a YouTube video, they'll be digital painting, and I love that they can flip it mirror image. I wish that I had the ability to do that really fast. We can hold it up to a mirror. But I love how they flip it back and forth, like to check where the eyes are spaced and whether something feels balanced. All right, I need to stop talking and look at where those veins are going. All right, so I am a puller. I want to pull the stroke towards me, so that's why I'm flipping it upside down. Some people will make a more natural stroke pushing it this way, but I want to pull it towards the core of my body. So most of the time when you see me changing the direction, see I'm changing the direction of my paper and altering it, it's because I'm rearranging so that I can pull that pencil towards me. And I always get the prettiest strokes that way. And then when the veins are starting to shift direction, I need to shift the paper. There we go. All right, so this one has some darkness down there. I'm going to try and clean up that point there. And this one has, like, the darkness doesn't go all the way out to the edge. It's kind of in here. There we go. And I'm just gonna give this a little pull right there so I don't forget that it's there. Yeah, there's actually a pull right along that whole edge there. The light is kissing it. And then that pull is coming down. The reason why I know to do this down here is because I'm looking at the color of the top half versus the color of the bottom half. And now I know that the bottom half needs to go a lot darker. Oop, went outside the line there. Let's catch that while I can. I like that. All right, next one. Tuck it back behind that little floret and then behind the little baby leaf and then tucking it behind this petal. Tucking it behind the baby leaf there. So I'm reading the photo reference that's up in the corner there. I'm looking at where the values are. I'm not using it to judge the color, because if I was coloring that color, this would be a lot darker in this area. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, I had to make sure that I was seeing that right. Okay, so here, this petal is coming up and it's flipping. So right here, we're seeing the underside, and the underside is light. I did not see that before. I'm glad I caught that. I spent some time just in the 10 minutes before the live stream started, just kind of letting my eyes roam this whole photo, looking for things that I would need to draw. So I was cutting out shapes and looking at photos in the last few minutes there, and I think I needed to spend some more time looking instead of working on my little leaf demonstration thing, because I missed that entirely. All right, what do I got here? I have darkness that comes along the edge there, and there's also darkness in the point, and I would have thought that would be lighter. All right, can I see the veins there? Can't see the veins. All right, I'm gonna come out. All right, so if these veins are coming out this way, it's gonna have a similar angle and then tilt that way. Sometimes I have to logic it out. All right, I'm gonna use some green to really do a super push there and a super push right there. I think I need a super push down here. All right. Now, I wasn't counting veins. I almost never count veins. As long as I get them in the right direction, they're going to feel okay. But there's two of these here that have a lot of light shining through, and I'm just choosing them in the relatively right area. Okay, now this edge here is super light. It comes down, and then I've exaggerated the wrinkle there. So I'm trying to get that boop, 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 where it's rising and falling in between the veins. Ta-da! Okay, the veins on this are so light. Like that center one is super dark, and the point down here is super dark. But I can't press very hard on these veins or I'm going to overdo it. They've got to be delicate. You know what? I'm gonna do a little bit of purple here, and then I'm gonna switch to the Deco Peach, because there's a lot of Deco Peach on this one. Every single one of these guys is different. They're each catching the light a little bit different. They're each wrinkled different. The dimension is never going to be the same on two petals. So it's always a case by case, starting over fresh kind of situation where you're re-evaluating. Usually there's things in common from petal to petal, but if you're not treating them all as unique, it's kind of like naming all your kids George. You definitely want to give them individual personality traits. They're all a little bit different. And right here, I'm kind of maxing out the paper, meaning that the tooth is pretty well burnished on that side. I'm not going to be able to get much more to stick. Here we go. That monster one. And I'm definitely going to take this left side and then right side. All right, switch into the green because I need a super push. This almost starts to look black. The green over purple over red. And now that I've got that dark, I can tell that I didn't take this one dark enough. I'll put a little bit of purple over the green now. That feels better. All right. I don't love how I have that shaped. That's better. There we go. I like that much better. Okay. Now the other side. The other side is scary. It's really wrinkly over here. And then it's super dark in there. That little jingle is the, somebody has let my dog outside and he's triggering the Ring camera. Okay. There we go. I had to think through this one really hard. And that's kind of the fun thing about doing these kind of wrinkles and waves as an exercise is without the pressure of trying to produce something, you can just experiment with it and say, okay, what do I need to make this darker? I don't know if that makes total sense. I don't love it. That's definitely something that I would return to kind of focus on it. And yeah, it's not my best work there. So this one we don't have to worry about depth because it's on top of everything else. If I've been doing my pushes right, this one is going to sit forward anyway. This push here is nice and dark. Maybe this one could go a little bit deeper. But again, the problem isn't with this one. It's with the leaf below it not being pushed enough. There's something a little funky going on at the point here. I need to get those veins in to really understand it. It's too matchy. All right, what is going on? Okay, there's a wave here. Wow, you can tell it. It's getting late. I'm getting punchy here. All right, so some darkness going this way, some darkness going that way. But then there's like this weird, it's like a triangle of darkness right here. And then there's another big patch right there. And then it's out here coming in. And those are just all dimensional waves there. Lynn says she'd be putting indigo all over it. I was trying really hard, Lynn. Don't tell me about indigo because you can bury me with the indigo pencil. I will take it with me to heaven because I love that color, but I didn't want to use it tonight. Because I do tend to overuse it. Okay, getting that depth. I'm going to push that leaf just a little bit more. And see, that's the nice thing about using such a limited number of colored pencil is that I've pushed right here, and then I saw that I needed more pushing there, so I could just keep going. I didn't have to switch to my leaf combination because my leaf combination is so similar to my petal combination. Getting close to the end. Okay, for this one, gosh, I don't see, like these, I see the veins, but this one, they're so wrinkly. So this is the kind of project that you shouldn't do in one sitting. Yeah, I'm live streaming it here in one sitting, but I can already tell at this point that my brain is a bit tired. And the way I can usually tell that that's happening is because I will look at something and I'll see it one way and I start to color it that way. And then I realize, no, it's a different way. And like I can see it two different ways, if that makes any sense. Like, is it a push? Is it a pull? Is it rising? Or is it actually falling? So when I start to have those little inner debates, it's either time for a break or it's time to go to bed. So you could do this over the space of several nights or afternoons. I would just make sure that you finish a petal. Like, don't leave it half colored and then come back and expect to finish it the next day or 2 hours from now, because you definitely will see it different at that point. But when I come back into the studio tomorrow morning, I plan to have this sitting out on my desk, and so it's probably going to be the first thing I see. And I'll probably see about 6 or 7 things that definitely need to get fixed. And it'll be one of those, what were you thinking last night moments. And that's normal. I know that your average coloring project is supposed to be, one afternoon of fun, but most painters take weeks or months to work on things. There are some painters that have worked on the same painting for a lifetime. They just keep modifying and fixing and altering, and yeah, you can take things too far and work on them too long. And with colored pencil and marker, you can definitely overdo it. But I think rushing through is a problem. And now's the time that I really need to be taking a break. I need to pull that towards my body. There we go. Get it back like a photo reference. And they're kind of going to go that way. Okay, that's dark there. Don't be afraid to sharpen that pencil. when your pencil's slightly dull, you're not making accurate, like you go to land and the pencil doesn't go where you expect it to go. So usually the way that I know that it's time to sharpen my pencil is I've attempted 3 times to put color in a particular spot and it's not going where I want it to go. So at this point, I've kind of run the peach over the purple enough that I'm really liking the color there. It's almost like a Parma violet. So when I come back to it tomorrow, I may do some more of those intersections so that I get that interesting light purple or light violet color coming out. It needs a cast shadow. I got some pencil lines here that I don't know what those are to. Definite things. Also need to look at it in the sunlight because it's feeling a little pink to me, and I may end up adding, where is it? So this is canary yellow. Oh my goodness, look at how old this this actually says Sanford on it. That tells you how old this canary yellow is. I have a lot of old pencils. So the canary yellow is a translucent yellow, and I can add it to some of the sunnier spots. I don't want to cover over all of the Deco Peach, but putting just a little hint of yellow on some of the high spots would be nice. So we're talking about like developing that interesting violet color and then adding a little bit of sunshine to some spots. That wouldn't be too bad, but it's absolutely optional. You don't have to do it. I would not use some of the other yellows. The canary yellow is a translucent one, so it's not going to mask over what you were had already colored, and it won't add any new highlights. It just adds a little bit of warmth to some of these areas. And that's one of the reasons why I love the Prismacolor set, because they give you a nice variety of opaques and translucents. And it's also one of the reasons why I'm always warning students that when you bounce around between brands, you might be substituting, it's more than the color. And you might be substituting a transparent yellow for an opaque yellow, and that would not be good. So the cast shadow, the easiest way to do it is with like a slate gray pencil. And it's probably too late at night for me to think clearly through cast shadows, but let's try and do it. All right, so my thinking is that, all right, I'm gonna do down, because cast shadows never look right to me when the light source is casting the shadow upwards. I like to do them down. All right, so this is Slate Gray number 936, which is just my all-purpose cast shadow type color. I'm holding it far from the point, and I'm going to use a circular stroke to grow the shape rather than draw the shape. And I'm figuring that this is sitting on a white table, and this is pointing downward. So the cast shadow touches and then starts to move away. And I'm doing them light because I can always come back and add more color later. And then as it gets closer, and I just followed that leaf through to here. All right, so I'm going to put some down and to the right of the flower blossoms in the center there. This is going to be an easy one to knock out there. And that one is going to hover a bit off the table. So see how this one is touching? And this one is hovering. All right, so this one is rising and then it's going to plunge back in there. So let's do it really close. And then the shadow's going to end there. Probably peek out there. That one close and then far. There we go. So the vein there, or the stem there, I will definitely scan this and put a photo of it on the resource page for you. Whoop, don't stand on my keyboard, Strudel. Ugh. Cat attack. Okay, so damn, it's gonna be over here. I don't stress about the shadows because I've done so many of them over the years, and I also know that when I've completely screwed one up, nobody has noticed. So and that happens a lot. So I've learned not to sweat them too much. I think I'm gonna do that one like that. Does everything have a shadow? I think they do. Yep. So of course I'm going to come in here and enrich them because they're barely showing up on camera. So I will add more of the slate gray, but I will also be adding Prussian green to any of the cast shadows cast by a green leaf. And then I will probably need something red. So just grabbing over here, what is this? Scarlet Lake. I will add red to any of the cast shadows from a red object because objects always lend some of their color to the cast shadow. And that is how I would do it. I will probably work on this a little bit more tomorrow morning, and then I'll take a photo of it or I'll scan it and then pop it onto the website so that you can see what this one looks like. There we go. So there we go. That is poinsettia. with lots of depth. So we've got different petals, and I'm always using, in flower classes, I always use my hands as if this was a leaf or a petal or something. So we've got lots of depth where like this is overlapping this one, and these two are overlapping that. We've got that depth there, but then we've also got some dynamic movement going on with the ruffles and the waves and getting those petal points to look like they're rising up and then dipping down at the end. I'm going to scroll just back up a little bit and make sure that I can't go through all of these comments, but I want to make sure that I haven't missed any super important questions. Definitely ask them in the comments section if I don't get to your question. Okay, so Joan is asking, I know there's a method to my madness. It's always my madness, yep. Okay, so she's wondering if there's a reason why I chose not to use yellow for the blossoms. Is it because the Copic yellows are too bright or greenish? Okay, so Joan is seeing a lot of yellow in these, the center area here, and I don't actually see that as yellow when I look at the photo up close. What I see is that those are just about to pop open, and so there's kind of like some little primitive like white petals in there, and it's just a detail that I chose to skip. Basically, when you look at a photo reference, I start by squinting, and I get in the colors that I see when I squint. And even when I'm squinting, I see that more as like a yellow-green, not necessarily a yellow. I have to look pretty closely and enlarge that to see that kind of detail. So it's just something that I would skip over. And I'm not sure it's worth introducing another set of yellow greens into the mixture, because the yellow greens that I've already chosen for the leaves are on the cool side. And so again, if I was doing a botanical study for a textbook, I probably would go to the trouble of adding those brighter yellow greens in the center there. I could, when I'm experimenting, now that you've brought it up, when I'm coming back in tomorrow, I could probably come in with some of this canary yellow and put it over the top, and it's going to give more of a golden feeling. And now that I see that there, I kind of want it here. So it's kind of, do I want to open up that can of worms and do it? But I'm generally simplifying things to squint level color. So if I can't see it when I'm squinting, it's not a detail that I'm going to add or a color that I'm going to add. And that's kind of the answer on that one. So Lynn says, the more I look at those tiny flowers, the more real they look. I would never have imagined them with the blank. Yeah, it just kind of, it grows. And it's through practice that you start to be able to read the photo reference better, decide what needs to go in there, how much detail to use, and which things to emphasize. So using those object studies to just kind of develop that part of your mind is a really good goal. It's practice with a purpose. So, you know, this may never see the light of day other than the fact that I'm scanning it for the website to share with you. But other than that, it's probably going to sit in this notebook until my grandkids discover it sometime. And that's fine, because I'm learning things when I'm doing this kind of stuff. I'm learning how much yellow is too much, or what can I do to improve the bends on things. I go into those practices with a specific goal, and your goal is going to be different than my goal, different than your friend's goals. It's just, what do you need to work on? What kind of things do you want to develop in your own coloring? And that's a great thing to discuss with others too. So if somebody's interested in opening up a discussion about that kind of thing over on the Facebook group, we can talk about that a bit more, about what kind of things are worth it to start practicing. Because practice isn't just sitting down and coloring something once and then never coloring it again. It's sitting down with a purpose, and then you find an object that you're going to color, which is going to further that purpose. And then if you don't succeed on this one, you work it again. until you start to develop that area that you want to develop. So if you're really working on depth still, you're going to choose lots of flowers that have petal overlaps. But if you're working on dimension, you're going to choose a flower that has lots of wavy edges. There's lots of good stamp artists out there who are now starting to draw more elaborate wavy edge stamps. Or you can sit there and you can trace the stamp and kind of add some of those waves to it. So if you're working on dimension, you need things with wonky, wavy edges. And so you just start looking for images that you can use that will further that goal. So Kathy's going to have to try this. Good. I hope so. I would love to see if you're working these images. I'd love to see you post them to Facebook so that I can see. It's so gratifying to see that, yes, somebody's succeeded with it, but it's also like, okay, I explained that well because I communicated it and somebody understood it and then was able to do it themselves. So it helps me become a better instructor when I see what you're coloring. If anything, I don't see enough people's coloring. That online thing, people don't always want to post their projects, but it really does help me. And it also forms, ideas for what classes can I teach next. Lynn loves the green over red, and I really, those areas where the super push, I love it when I get one of those areas because I can then start layering the green and the purple over each other. That's what sings to me. Alyssa was looking for the cast shadow, so yep, I added it in, but I can tell just looking at it on camera there, it's not nearly dark enough. It's got to go up a couple of values. It just means I need to fill in the tooth of the paper and give it a few more coats. Oh, good. It looks like people found some value in this. Nikki has asked, what if you push something when you meant to pull and how do you fix it? That is an excellent question. I am so glad that I saw that while I can still demonstrate. Okay, so I have 3 levels of erasers. Let me pull out 4 colored pencil. If it's Copic, it's kind of in there. And it's going to be hard to correct it. But if you push something, meaning you made it too dark and now you want to lighten it up and you're working on it with colored pencil, I have 3 levels of erasers that I use. The first one is the Do No Harm. It's that sticky tack. And this just lifts just a bare little bit of color. But for something where you've, like, let's say right here, I decided that where I've pulled here should be a push, and then on the other side where I pushed it should be a pull. And I want to reverse that. Then the next, if this doesn't take care of it, then you can try with the white eraser. This was another version of that white eraser. This is, they're polymer erasers and they don't have any grit to them. But if this doesn't take it off, then you pull out the bad boy. So the bad boy is a Sumo Grip black eraser. Now that's different than a black pearl eraser. And those you'll find in the, like the office department. But this is a black eraser, which is basically this eraser with some grit to it. And at this point, hello Strudel. Cat Highway here. All right, so I've kind of, after all these years, I know that if I want to lift this up, this isn't going to touch it. This isn't going to touch it. I'm going to need the black eraser. They also come in like in a brick, and I don't see the brick, and I stopped buying the brick after they developed this grip one because it's refillable and you can then just push this up. The problem with these brick erasers is that over time you start to crack them, and the black erasers crack really, really badly. So I like them in this grip thing. And this is the replacement bits. So if I want to lift that color, and I know this is going to give people a heart attack, but it's colored pencil. I can fix it. So see how that lifted up? It can't lift the Copic. The Copic is already dark here on this side and light here on this side. But let's just see if I can do it. Personal challenge. So see how I've kind of reversed that? It's not the best job, but I'd have to work at it a little bit. But now that fold is going the opposite direction. And so it's just knowing the type of eraser that you need to use. And for a major mistake, or like around the edges here, I've got a couple of smudges there. It's going to take the black eraser to do it. And I know a lot of, like, somebody went into an art store, and I've even had this happen to me. Somebody told me that these are for black paper only. It doesn't leave a black mark. Don't worry about it. It's just got a little bit of grit to it. It's not as much grit as what's on the end of a pink eraser, but you don't want a pink eraser because it also leaves pink smudges. So this has some grit to it. This has a ton of grit to it. It's just way too strong for using on art paper. But that is how I would fix something that I meant to pull if I accidentally pushed it. Sherry is saying it looks better than the photo reference, and that's kind of what happens when you get pretty good at the folds and waves, because you're amplifying what's in the photo reference. So yeah, sometimes I've overdone it on things, but yes, sometimes I look at things and I'm like, wow, that really came from that photo reference, but it's just, you know, adding things and emphasizing things. But yes, the color in that photo reference is what makes it look dead, Sherry. Or is it Cherie? I don't know. I'll have to learn. Lynn says, oh no, the retractable sumo grip eraser, this one is not available anymore? I'm going to look. I'm writing that down to look tomorrow. Not that I don't believe you. It's just I link a lot of people to it, so I need to know. I hope they didn't discontinue that. The brand name on it is Sakura, I believe. It's Sakura. Darn. Lynn says, I use a block and sharpen a corner when I need to. So yes, Sakura and several other companies do make the block. This is a block style. If you get a block style, keep that the cardboard on it. Because that helps reduce the amount of crackage that you'll see. So when you start to use it down below the, like eventually the cardboard will get too long for it. So I just trim it. And so I just fold it flat and then I pull out my scissors and then trim it down a little bit more, not too much. And then pop it back on there, and that'll keep protecting it from cracking it. So there we go. That is it. I think I've gone through all the questions that I've seen so far. Yeah, I will keep watching the comment section on this video, on the recording, and I'll answer questions there or over on Facebook if you have any. This is working out pretty well. It's Sherry as in Sherry. Yay. Okay. It kind of looks like it might be pronounced a French way, I guess, from the way I had a student that was named Cherry, but she answered to Sherry because so many people got it wrong. I don't want to call you the wrong thing on purpose. All right, so it's looking to me like the second Tuesday is working out pretty well. It's past my bedtime, but I do it. And so I think the next second Tuesday is going to end up in, it's obviously going to be in December. It looks like it's probably going to be December 12th. And I don't have a topic for it yet, so I'm open to suggestions. It should be something fairly simple because we're getting close to Christmas. So I know that a lot of people are busy around Christmas time, so you won't have a lot of time to devote to the live stream. So we'll do something short and sweet, maybe just like a Christmas bowl or something super simple. Let's see. Nikki is asking, does the Mighty Networks forum still work? I tried to log in the other day and it wouldn't let me. I've kind of discontinued the general forum, Nikki. So if that's what you're trying to get into, that one, there was no traffic on it. So Mighty Networks is basically just for the 12-week courses, which are going away, and then the blend. And then most of the other discussion is happening over on the Facebook chat. And I will put a link for that probably in the description here. All right, guys, so I'm ready for bed. It is 9:30 here my time. Yeah, I will check back tomorrow and see what's going on in the discussion section and over on Facebook if you have questions. Really, I would love to have discussions about anything that wasn't clear. So, all right, I will see you this time next month with a simple project. Oh, wait a minute. Kathy's got a quick question here. I only color with Prismacolor pencils. Can I use the same dimension theory with pencils? Absolutely. The only reason why I add the markers is because it eliminates like 2 to 3 layers of colored pencil. Otherwise, you're sitting there doing those base layers over and over and over again and your hands getting worn out. I just didn't have the time to spend to put down those base layers. And so the Copic actually started really simple, just as a way to fill in the tooth of the paper. But if you want to do it by hand, everything that we did here works with colored pencil and it works with watercolor. All right, so I think that's the end of Kathy's question and I'm ready for bed. So I will see everybody this time next month and over on Facebook. All right, bye. Have a good evening, everyone.